I was just laughing to myself. I actually used the zoom control for the camera and get in there a little, make it a little bigger. So when I describe what's going on now, this is the tuning capacitor out of the Channel Master. I think it's 6515, and I took the back off. I showed you that there's four trimmers in the back. There also seems, oh, in the back white plate into the square box seems to be glued or fused. I cannot get anything to wiggle. So now I'm back on the front. Now if you look on the corner screws, you'll see they're missing. There's two big long ones and two short ones. There's also two more. I don't know what they go to. But the back plate, which has the trimmers, it has a wire or wire that comes up to the front. It's actually a post. It's a flat post. It comes up. It brings the ground or two connections of the trimmers up to the front ground post of the front end of this. So be aware of that. This is a very complicated trimmer cap. Now there is a video on YouTube, and the guy is pulling this thing apart. It's not glued like these are. This one is, and he's changing it from a four gang to a two. There's also, if you go really looking around on the internet, you'll find a Sanyo tuning cap, which that's what this is, and he took it all apart, and it was bad on a $12 radio, which basically I think this fringe radio was about $12 years ago in 1960. So the radio is basically 65 years old. Now the reason I'm staying with this is because in the future, if you want to restore a radio, a lot of them use this kind of capacitor, and they're not available. Well, there are some available, but you're gonna have to move pins around and stuff so they'll meet up with the circuit board the same way as the old one. They're not. This doesn't. These trimming caps don't seem to have a standard. Now they do the two gang ones, the simple ones. I think they have two trimmers on the back for cheap AM radios. They seem to be a dime a dozen. You can still buy them on eBay, but that's not what this is. Now, besides this being a long distance AM radio and having three gangs instead of two, basically it's not a trim cap for an FM radio. It's a bastard. AM radios that are made for long distance or fringe have to have that third gang, and that you have the first gang tunes the front end antenna, the ferrite rod. Then you go through one transistor amplifier. It comes out and goes to a coil. That coil is now trimmed with a capacitor that works with the first capacitor. So you have a tuned front end. The next one is simple. It's just the oscillator. And of course you got trimmers on the back for doing the alignment. There's four on this unit. So I'm doing this unit. This is probably the most difficult. We should be able to glean some of the nonsense in the future for when if you watch these videos, you glean enough knowledge that when you work on one of the FM ones, you can probably take it apart and put new insulators in between not the vanes, the disc, this sucks being old, man. I want to tell you right now, not vanes. Well, it might come to me. Well, anyway, you'll open it up and you'll know what you're looking at. I kept hoping that somewhere I would bump into this trimmer cap somewhere on the internet. I've been looking, or someone that's gone down the road or in the rabbit hole that I'm in now, where they can't get it apart. Now, I'm hoping I can get the front end, this white front end that's in the square box that's clear, to move or wiggle a little bit. The back would not wiggle, and you have to take the back plate off. You have to unsolder it, the whole deals, because something from the front panel or the front plate could be wired to something on the back plate. You got to make sure that those posts are movable. I don't know yet, but I know enough to take that back plate off. But the plates, that's the name of it, the plates inside that move. There's this fixed plates, movable plates, and instead of air between the plates, in these trimmer caps, they put very thin pieces of plastic, which would be a dielectric. And I'm going along, and I've had enough with this thing already today. I did a long walk. I reached a new old man's stage. Now let me explain to you this. I'm talking to a woman over there, and then she mentioned her daughter was coming. Or anyway, I cut it short, and then as I'm walking down, she's right behind me, and she screams to her daughter, but she's in a blind spot. And I look at way ahead. I think I see her daughter, so I cup my hands and I yell, and then I start waving my arms, and she's waving her arms, and I said, "Step out over here." The daughter could see her, but it wasn't the woman I was screaming at. The woman I was screaming at was really far away. She heard me. She turned around. Now the two of us are waving. Meanwhile, maybe a block away was her daughter. And the daughter said that she heard her mother call her the first time, but when she turned around, uh, the mother was in a blind spot. And that's why I said to the mother, you're in a blind spot. But for the other woman, meanwhile, the daughter was able to see her. And then the woman kept going that I was yelling for. She says, no, she sees me. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm walking. All of a sudden, I look over, and she's with another woman, which is her daughter. And then when they went down and around, when they come back towards me, I said, yeah, I've reached a new plateau. You know, when you're old and you're trying to be helpful and you screw it up. I said, you see that woman way over there? I said, that woman heard me too. I thought that's who you were calling to. She says, no, but it worked. And then the daughter said, when I turned around, I didn't see my mom because I told her you're in a blind spot where she was standing by a building. I said, step out here, and it all worked. But I had the wrong person I was yelling to. You know, when you get older, you try to be helpful, but you don't have that edge anymore. You know. But the woman said to me, "You helped out. You know, it did work out." But the whole reason why the daughter was further down was because I had the mother. I was talking to the mother. You know, I was talking to people today over in a different section, and I wanted to get their take on whether they encourage their children to go to college. Well, my neighborhood, the parents actually say, and they used to do that in my neighborhood where I grew up. I didn't go to college. Why would I send my son to college? And I'm like, holy crap. Now, in my house, my sister went to college, and when it was time for me, all my mother did was complain about how tight money was to send your sister to college. You know, it was $800 a year. They couldn't, because my father was giving extra money to my grandmother. She had 4 sons, 3 daughters, whatever. My father was paying her health care, the supplement. And one other aunt would help pay the supplement sometimes, but she'd start little fights with my mother and then wouldn't pay it. My father would have to pay the full amount. There's a lot of shit that went on, man. And I realized life has always been crap. It always has been crap. But there's been fun stuff around. So when you're younger, it's just a matter of waiting for someone to ring the doorbell and say, check out what I got. Check out what so-and-so's doing. That don't happen when you get older. New TV shows that come along, they're crap. They're crap. They're not made for my age group. And then your hearing goes. So when you're watching television, I use external speakers. You don't always hear what the person's saying, and I also use closed caption, and I can enjoy it a little more. Now, friends of mine that are my age, they don't watch any of the new shows. I still do, but they're very simple. You know, and then somebody mentioned Leave It to Beaver, and I put it on. Every once in a while, every few years, I'll put an episode on, and it's really low key. The plot is very simple. I read how about when they made Leave It to Beaver episodes, if people laughed during filming or whatever, they would rewrite the scene so it was more subtle. They wanted it to be a certain way, and they have a classic on their hand, It's classic. Eddie, Lumpy. I mean, come on. That's one of the funnier shows. But they didn't go for the big laugh. They went for the slow simmering chuckle. And I had it on the other day. It was Eddie was going to go away to sea, and of course, when Eddie meets the captain or whatever, he starts saying, "You'll eat fish, you'll live fish, you'll chop fish." And then Eddie comes out and he's in the room, and Lumpy and Wally went with him. And he looks up at the fish on the wall, and he actually gets sick. And then they had to take him home. And then Wally goes over, talks to the father, and says, give him a way out. He doesn't really want to go. And Lumpy and Wally wanted to go with him, and of course Ward cut him off. They're eating breakfast, and he goes, "Dad, I want to talk to you." Oh, there's the phone. Yeah. Now let's see what it is. Hold on. Potential spam. Ain't gonna talk to it. All right. I hate when that annoys me. But anyway, I watch, like I said, I try to watch a Leave It to Beaver episode every few years, and that was one I didn't remember, so I watched it. But there's so many things in the world. But that's what it was when we were a kid. I remember getting up in the morning, knowing I didn't like going to school, but I would sit there and watch television before I went, and it would calm me down. And over the years, my mother complained that I would watch cartoons, and then she wanted me to grow up sooner than I was, because she was a hood. I told you, my mother got kicked out of high school. They told her don't come back. So my mother always acted like she was older, but she was very immature, couldn't make decisions, the whole thing. But anyway, uh, I'm doing this video for prosperity. If I can get it to come apart, it's going to help somebody somewhere. And I think the part that's bad, is right back here on the back of that chair. I think there's a ring, and that's where the oxidation is. I told you, if I had 5 of these, I'd just take a hammer to this thing, break it open, see what failed, and do it that way. Now, the one guy mentioned, I showed you how to open up a wall wart power supply thing, and crack it open with a hammer against a hard surface. And someone come in and said, what's his name? Big Clive uses a vise. I don't have a vise. We didn't have a vise at the Radio Shack. See, everything was, the guy that showed us just says, "Oh, we got to go place with a hard surface." I said, "There's loading docks." He goes, "This is perfect." And then we had hammers, and he starts cracking it. He says, "You crack it along here," and he opened it up and handed it to us. Now, the other thing I did was I would drill out pop rivets on the Radio Shack CB radio power supply, and it had a fusible link, and I knew just where to cut the paper on the transformer. Didn't have to take the transformer out of the box. Now, a lot of people would open up that transformer, they would throw it away, and then they'd put another Radio Shack transformer in there that was approximately the same size, but it wasn't the same amperage. And then they started bringing them into us. And I said, "Where's the transformer?" "Oh, it was open. I threw it out." I said, "No, it really isn't open." I said, you cut the outer paper of the transformer, and there's a fusible link right there." And the person's like, "Well, how'd you know that?" I said, "Well, I sort of had one that was bad, and I'm like, well, let's open up the transformer and see what winding failed." And there it was, the fusible link. I had learned about the fusible link on other pieces. They're in television sets too. And then that other guy showing us the power adapter wall wart had them inside. The Radio Shack ones. I don't know if other ones are, but knowing how to open the power supply, wall wart, whatever. It's also to know how to open it real quick by hitting it with a hammer. You can harvest the enamel wire for other projects out of it. But somewhere out there, someone's taken one of these apart, repaired it, and put it back together. But he didn't do a video. Now, that one guy, I don't know if he's Russian. He's got some kind of accent going. And he takes a 4-gang one of these. It looks like this one, but you can tell it comes apart. And some of these, if you've ever looked at them, they're taped together with clear tape. And this one isn't. This one's either fused. I told you about that ultrasonic tool. You just run it along 2 pieces of plastic that are touching each other. They vibrate, friction is formed, The plastic liquefies and it's stuck. And this got a weird look. This might be epoxy on this one. Some kind of glue. Yeah, remember this is 65 years old. And you might have noticed by now I don't give up. And I did have this in the garbage. I got the new keyboard on my computer, and the old keyboard is somewhere else. I did not open that keyboard up and clean it, put it all back together again. It's got an intermittent. If I take it apart and clean it, between the sheets of plastic in there with contacts, if I clean between there, it's like dust is getting in there, or dust from the plastic pieces from rubbing form dust. And after a while, they keep the contacts from touching because the contacts have worn out. So you take that apart, you clean everything, you put it together, you get about 6 months out of it. And at some point, I'm starting to say to myself, you know, I got to move forward. I got to stop fixing everything. And of course, the words just leave my mouth. And I pull out the 6515, and it's a nice size, the Channel Master. I'm sitting there, I start turning it. I'm gonna find a station that's, you know, and just relax before I go to bed. I'm like, no way. The first words out of my mouth going, no way. Volume control went bit? No, it wasn't the volume control. It's the tuning capacitor. This one here. I'm like, come on, come on. You know, tube radios will do that. And the other guy left a message about the power, the voltage to tubes. Yeah, years ago, a lot of these radios, they told you to plug it into an outlet that was 110. And then some would say 110 to 115. Then nowadays, I believe most people have 120 into their house. And then when you're under load of the tube set at that socket, what does it drop down to? You know, there is a drop because there's wiring all through the house. Well, there's people on the internet that start saying, oh, that extra voltage, that'll ruin the tubes. All right, I'm going into this now. Watch my next video. I think that's it for this one. That's it.